recently kind of ruined my husband's best friend's wedding, and I know I'm supposed to regret that kind of thing, but I really don't. And I'll tell you why, because I definitely have my reasons. So for context, my husband and I went to high school together, but back then we were not friends and we didn't really know each other that well. In fact, we hardly even spoke to each other until a few years back, when one of our common friends invited us both to her 21st birthday party. She had a huge birthday bash, and that was the first time we met each other after graduating high school. He didn't know a lot of people there, so we started talking and we exchanged numbers. After talking for a couple of weeks, he decided to ask me out. And it was pretty convenient because the colleges that we were in were not that far away from each other. So although we had met over the holidays, when we met back, we would be able to continue whatever relationship this was. Initially, both of us were taking it pretty lightly because we thought that this was just a fling. But then we started getting serious about each other, and within a few months, we were properly dating and in a relationship. Since then, we have been together and we've been married for a little over a year now. And keeping our marriage aside, we have indeed been together for 5 years. So I think that's a significant amount of time, and I think it's enough to prove to everybody that we know we are serious about each other, that we love each other, and that's enough for us. But of course, some people will never be convinced, and my husband's best friend, let's call him Richard, is one of those people. I don't know why, but he has never liked me, even though I have never even given him a reason to feel that way. I have always been perfectly pleasant with him, but he, I don't know, seems to have a pretty weird attitude towards me. He has always been cold and indifferent to me, has never reciprocated my efforts to be friends, and I know that my husband wants to convince me that this is how he is in general with people who he doesn't know that well. I don't think that that's the case here, because you can get to know people well if you at least give them a chance, which I don't think he has given me. For the first few years when I was younger, it used to bother me a lot because we would spend a lot of time with him, but in the past 2 years, I've learned not to care about it because I'm older, and also we don't see that much of him anymore because he got a job out of state, so we would only see him when he comes back to visit. That's still every month. But at least we are not thrown together as frequently anymore, so I'm fine with it. My husband has still kept in touch with him. He's pretty clueless about this kind of thing, and I don't even bother him about it because it's not that big of a deal. But there was an incident that took place a couple of weeks ago that really threw me off, and that was why I did what I did at his wedding. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks back, Richard had come back to town for just a weekend, and he wanted to meet my husband for a couple of drinks at their favorite bar. I usually don't mind it, but that weekend it was my anniversary and he knew that. Of course he knew that, because that morning itself he had texted both of us to wish us a happy anniversary. And right after that, he had asked my husband if he wanted to meet for drinks that night or not. I mean, at that point in time, he himself was engaged, so he should have had some common sense and known that on his anniversary night, my husband and I would have obviously had plans and he wouldn't be part of it. And yet he asked my husband, and obviously I was kind of annoyed at him for even asking, but I knew I was being petty, so I didn't say anything about it. Also, I knew my husband was obviously going to say no because we were going to have a date night at home, so I tried not to let it get under my skin too much. So my husband declined. He told her that he already had plans with me, but he made a mistake of telling Richard that he planned on staying at home. And that's how, in the evening, while we were just sitting down to put on a movie, Richard showed up at our house. It was clear from the looks of it that he was already pretty tipsy. but he had a wrapped gift with him. And I was the one who had opened the door, so he bowed in front of me and started wishing me a happy anniversary. And he told me to unwrap the gift that he had got for both of us. It was all very bizarre, but I just wanted him to leave. So I quickly unwrapped it, and guess what? It was a framed photograph of my husband with his ex-girlfriend. He had been dating this other girl from high school for 3 years, since he was 17, till he was 20. But they couldn't deal with the long-distance thing for long while they were in college, so they ended up breaking up. And about a year after they broke up, he started dating me. In the beginning, he was still friends with his ex, but as soon as he started dating me, she told him that she couldn't handle being platonic with him anymore, and she wanted more, and she didn't want him to see me anymore. She thought that she would be able to break us apart because at that point, things were too early to be serious, and she thought that we were just having a fling. Unfortunately for her, by then, my husband had already started to develop feelings for me, so he said no to her. He blocked her out of his life altogether, and that was that. At least for him, that was it. But for almost 2 years, she kept telling everyone who listened how my husband had broken her heart, how he had basically cheated on her with me, even though they had been broken up for a very long time when my husband and I first started talking, and how I was basically a homewrecker. None of that was true, but some people believed it, and it left a pretty bad taste in our mouths. And this was the girl in the picture for whatever reason. Richard thought that it would be hilarious to give us a framed photograph of my husband with this woman on our first wedding anniversary. I was too shocked to even say anything, and he just kept laughing, and even my husband, when he saw the picture, just looked annoyed. But he couldn't exactly say anything because we didn't know how to react to this kind of thing. But anyway, after a few seconds, he said he was not going to hold us up anymore. And after wishing us a happy anniversary once again, he left without another word. That was enough, though it kind of ruined the evening. And though we tried to salvage it by watching a nice movie, drinking good wine and getting takeout, some of our favorite things to do, it didn't feel the same anymore. And at the end of the evening, I ended up telling him that I had always had a feeling that Richard didn't like me. And he especially did not like the kind of influence that I had in my husband's life, for whatever reason. What he had done that day just proved whatever I had already believed, and I never brought it up with my husband because I didn't think that it was important enough, but this time, things had gone a little too far. I could put up with him being distant and not reciprocating my efforts of being friends with him, but this was just strange and had no explanation or justification. My husband told me that he agreed, and even though he had never picked up on it in the past, now that he thought about it in hindsight, he could see what I meant. And he told me he would definitely have a discussion about this with Richard. Under usual circumstances, I probably would have wanted him to cut Richard off entirely. But I knew that it would be very difficult for him to do something like that because Richard had been his friend since they were in diapers. You see, my in-laws are next-door neighbors with Richard's parents, and they still live in the same place, so they grew up together. And since they were even born just a couple of months apart, they went to the same school. They were in the same grade, and they had never been separated until they parted for college and work. So clearly, Richard has been a huge part of my husband's childhood, and I can understand why he's so unwilling to let that friendship go. And when my husband said he was going to talk to Richard about it, that was good enough for me. And the very next day, even before my husband could call him up, Richard ended up calling us up. He added us both to a conference call and said he would like to meet us both in person, but he had already promised his parents that he was going to spend the day with them. So we decided to sort it all out on the phone, and in the beginning of the conversation itself, he said he was really sorry about his behavior, and he had actually never intended on hurting either of us, But when he woke up that day, he had the clarity that that's exactly what he had done, regardless of his intentions. He said he had not been thinking straight, and that after a few drinks, their other friends from high school had convinced him that it would be a hilarious idea to give us that framed photograph on our anniversary, just to annoy us a bit. He thought that it would be a funny thing back then, but when he woke up, he just felt guilty for everything, and he wanted to truly apologize to both of us from the bottom of his heart. He seemed sincere enough, so my husband decided to forgive him. But I, even though I said that it was all right, didn't feel the same way. Like I said, we already had a lot of issues in the past, and I don't know, I just felt kind of weird about the whole situation, but I didn't want to make a big thing out of it. So I told him that it was all good, he didn't need to worry. After that, because things were sorted out, my husband was happy enough, but I was still holding out on him. Anyway, that was almost 4 weeks back, and recently, a couple of days back, we met him again in person at his rehearsal dinner. And that was where everything went down, because once again, he had started acting very cold and weird with me. And I found that very strange, especially after what had happened just about a month ago. I found it very strange. He was willing to forget all of it, and especially forget the fact that I had forgiven him and given him a second chance, and yet he was acting as if I was hardly even wanted there at the dinner. I'm not even kidding. It was not like I had been imagining it, because as soon as we walked in, he welcomed my husband pretty warmly, but while my husband was speaking to his fiancée, I thought that he would welcome me to the party the same way. But he just gave me a once-over and then looked away. I mean, that's weird because I'm his guest and he didn't treat any of his other guests the same way, so why me? That was the first thing that really annoyed me. And then, while everybody was chatting before dinner was served, my husband, Richard, and the rest of their friends from high school, including me, and also Richard's fiancée, were all standing in a group while the guys were reminiscing about their high school memories. And all of a sudden, Richard started talking about the time my husband and his ex-girlfriend, the same one that I had mentioned, got caught making out under the bleachers by the gym teacher. Everybody laughed about it, but I found it very annoying because they were not even talking about any of these things, which could lead him to bring up a story like this. And my husband looked pretty uncomfortable too. People knew that this was a sore spot for him after everything that had happened, but I was still willing to give Richard the benefit of the doubt. That all went down the drain as soon as he glanced at me after telling the story while everyone was laughing and decided to smile at me. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to drop the big bomb. Before I say what I did, I feel like I have to tell you guys that a couple of minutes before that, I had been speaking to Richard's fiancée and having a one-on-one conversation with her. She had been telling me about how happy she was with the wedding and everything, and because this was her first time coming to our city, I wanted to know how she was finding everything. She and Richard had met at work, so she was not from around here, and she was telling me about how she had made a deal with Richard that if they did not have any bachelor or bachelorette parties, then she would agree to having the wedding down here, like he wanted, instead of in her hometown. Pretty neat, right? Well, at least it would have been if I didn't know for a fact that Richard had definitely had a bachelor party. And his fiancée was telling me about how she had made the deal and she thought it was a good one because the whole concept of bachelor and bachelorette parties made her really uncomfortable because she knew how people behaved at these parties and she didn't like it. So she thought that it was a fair trade because Richard had been pretty excited to have a bachelor trip, but he had to describe the idea if he wanted to get married in his choice of location. So I knew she definitely had not had a bachelorette party, but my husband had been telling me just a few days back that he had declined an invitation to Richard's bachelor party because there would be a bunch of people there. And most of the guys there were going to be single, since there were a lot of groomsmen who were unmarried, so it would get pretty crazy, and he didn't want to be a part of it because he had work the next day. So I literally knew for a fact that Richard had definitely had a bachelor party because he tried to convince my husband to try and attend, and he had refused. But even when his fiancée was talking to me about it and how glad she was that they hadn't had these parties, I kept my mouth shut because I didn't think that it was my place to say anything about it. And I did not want to ruin anything, even though by then I was already pretty annoyed with Richard. However, after that whole story regarding his ex and everything, I just couldn't hold it back anymore, and I decided to say what I knew. So, speaking as loudly as I possibly could, I turned around and told Richard in front of his fiancée that it had totally slipped my mind, but I really wanted to thank him for excusing my husband from the bachelor party that they had a couple of days ago. I told him my husband really didn't want to miss it, but as they all know, he had work in the morning the next day and he really couldn't afford to skip work. Richard's fiancée obviously looked very confused. He himself looked angry, and all the other guys were fidgeting, trying not to look at us directly because even they were part of all of this. They knew that he had been lying to his future wife, with the exception of my husband, of course, who hadn't even been there and was not a part of any of this. He was just lost as to what was happening, but soon enough Richard's fiancée realized what I had just said, and just to drive it home, I turned around. I told her that I had totally forgotten to bring it up while I was talking to her, but they had definitely had a bachelor party. I spoke to her very kindly because I didn't actually have anything against her. However, she was just collateral damage in this unfortunate situation. I do feel bad about it, but I couldn't have done anything else, so I told her very politely that it had slipped my mind, but I was pretty sure that she was mistaken while she was speaking to me about not having had a bachelor and bachelorette parties, because as far as I was concerned, I'm pretty sure that even if she hadn't had one, Richard had definitely hosted one because he had invited and tried to get my husband to attend, and I was pretty sure there must have been some confusion. She looked furious. She didn't even talk to anybody else but asked Richard straight up if this was actually true or not. And he started fumbling with his words. Obviously, he didn't have enough time to delete the messages from his phone, and when she demanded to see his phone to check it, he had to decline. And that was it for her. That confirmed everything I had just said, and she just stormed out without another word. I could see she was crying, and I felt really bad for her. But there was nothing else to be done. She stormed out of the venue in full sight of everyone, and after she was gone, I looked at my husband and told him I wanted to go back home. He didn't even question it, because I think at that point he had put two and two together. So we went out to the parking lot, and in the distance we could see Richard and his fiancée arguing. And it seemed to be pretty bad, and we just got into our car and drove back home, and on the way home, I explained everything to him in detail. I thought that he was going to be mad about it, but he wasn't. He just didn't even care and said that he was done with his friendship with Richard because clearly he did not respect me and he did not want to have any sort of relation with people who didn't have respect for me, knowing that he loved me. I knew that was a difficult decision for him, so I didn't expect him to say anything else to validate what I had done. That was it, and that was enough for me. But at the same time, a lot of other people are very upset with me since now a couple of days have passed and I have found out that Richard and his fiancée have decided to postpone their wedding indefinitely. I don't know if it's ever going to happen or not. I don't know if they are going to break up over this or not, but I feel like it's not my fault. Yes, I was the one who spoke up about it and told his fiancée about the bachelor party, and maybe my intentions were not right, because I definitely did it with a spirit of revenge, but at the same time, I spoke the truth. It's not like I made up a lie to get back at him, and he had been acting weird with me for a very long time. So I don't understand why it's so wrong for me to get back at him. He, a bunch of his friends from school, and even Richard's parents, everybody, have sent me a lot of messages over the past few days telling me that what I had done was despicable. It was petty and small, and because of my insecurities regarding my husband's ex-girlfriend, I had ended up ruining somebody else's marriage and relationship, and it just went to show that I was a very small-hearted, narrow-minded person. The problem is, I don't understand why I am the one to blame here. Why I'm the one being accused of ruining somebody's relationship when in reality, Richard ruined his own relationship by lying to his fiancée. My husband has told me that I am not the bad guy here, but the amount of messages I have received, I don't know what to feel anymore. I do agree that my heart was not in the right place, but I don't think that makes me the bad guy, and I definitely don't think I deserve this kind of flack for what I did. So, AITA for telling my husband's best friend's fiancée that he had had a bachelor party behind her back and apparently ruined their relationship? Update 1. Hi, thank you so much for everybody who reached out to me and commented on my post. So I have decided to block Richard and all his friends and even his parents. As it is, I barely know his parents, so I don't understand why they felt comfortable enough to reach out to me just to tell me that they didn't approve of what I had done and call me names. I mean, they are nobody to me. I don't even care about them. As for the rest of the people, I only knew Richard and his friends through my husband. And now, since my husband is interested in speaking to them or having any contact with them, I don't feel the need to keep up appearances and be nice to them either, especially when they have made it so clear they don't have any positive feelings towards me. I was never close with them in the first place. They never made me feel welcome in their little group or whatever, but most of them treated me politely and cordially, which Richard had never bothered to do, and I never found out why, because I have asked my husband about it several times, and he just doesn't know. He has no answers for it, so I guess we'll just have to do without solving this mystery as to why Richard has always hated me. But anyway, it doesn't matter because my husband has also blocked Richard, and so far he has not tried to get in touch with my husband either. So I think we're done for good with these people, and I definitely don't have any complaints about it, even though I do think my husband is a bit upset. But I think he'll get over it. Update 2. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since my last update, and almost a week since the incident at the rehearsal dinner. Today, Richard finally reached out to my husband from a different email account, since he had been blocked everywhere. I thought that he was going to apologize to my husband or something, given the long friendship they had had, but instead, he just told my husband that he was really disappointed that even in such difficult times, he was choosing to stand by me instead of with his oldest friend in the world. He said that he was having a hard time believing that somebody he had stood by all his life was treating him like this and choosing to support me, who had ruined his marriage and relationship on purpose. He said he never wanted anything to do with my husband ever again, and he never even wanted to speak to him ever again. He also said a bunch of horrible things about me, saying that I'm the worst woman that he has ever had the misfortune of knowing, and he had always known that I was going to stand in the way of their friendship at some point or other, because I was just a jealous person, and I was trying to alienate my husband from everybody who loved him just so that I would find it easier to control him. And even though he wouldn't believe it now, he would see that this was exactly the case in a few years. And by then, it would be too late for him to do anything about the situation, and he would forever be trapped because even if he thinks of me that way, why would he have to say it to my husband? What was he possibly expecting? That all of a sudden my husband was going to file for a divorce and marry him instead or something? I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And to be honest, I did think for a long time he was probably jealous of me because now I was my husband's priority and he wasn't. But I think it's just crazy or something because I can't imagine any normal person acting like this. I really don't know what his problem is, but I hope he gets over it and that he sticks to his promise of never contacting me or my husband ever again because we don't need him in my life. So far, my husband had been feeling a little bad about everything that had happened, but after this email that he received, even though he's sad about it, I think he's mostly indignant and angry about what has happened and about what has been said with regards to me. So, well, I guess Richard just lost a great deal more than my husband did because I'm pretty sure that my husband had always been a better friend than he. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update and I just received some extremely weirdly strange news. My husband and I had pretty much forgotten about the whole debacle with Richard and his wedding and everything because for the past 3 months we have not been in touch with him, although we have heard from certain acquaintances from high school that a few weeks after the incident, him and his fiancée broke up and Richard is back here now since he quit his job and has decided to start a business here, so he could be closer to his parents. It's been a while since then. That's the last I heard of them. But today, his ex-fiancée reached out to me on social media and I found that pretty strange because we had only met a couple of times. We were definitely not close enough to be friends or anything. In fact, we were not even friends online, but even then she sent me a message and when I opened it, gave me the shock of a lifetime. Basically, I finally know the reason why Richard never liked me, and that's because he loved me. Apparently, this is the confession he made to his fiancée, and contrary to popularity, it was not actually she who had dumped him, but the other way around. She had been willing to work things through, in spite of the fact that he had lied to her about the bachelor party. But he was the one who told her he couldn't do this anymore because he truly loved me. Apparently, he had loved me since we were in high school together, and it had broken his heart when I ended up getting with his best friend, and that's when he started hating me publicly. But in private, he had very different feelings. I have to say, he has to be a pretty brilliant actor because I was totally convinced he hated me for no reason. That was the real reason why he acted like he wanted nothing to do with me, because he was upset with me for choosing his best friend over him, even though I was never even aware that there was a choice, because for me it had always been my husband. And honestly, I had never even noticed Richard because it's not like we had been friends at any point in time, and he had never put in an effort into talking to me or anything, so I don't understand why he acted like I had slighted him or something or treated him cruelly for all these years. It's just ridiculous. And I know that a lot of people might be thinking I shouldn't trust his ex, but I know for a fact that it's true because I have screenshots. So I know she's not lying since I don't think the screenshots are edited, and I don't think that she would go to that length because she doesn't even know me. But anyway, she just sent me those screenshots and explained the situation to me, telling me that she thought I should know, and then I showed it all to my husband, and now I guess we finally have a reason as to why we had always behaved like that. It just reminds me of how little boys try to annoy little girls on the playground simply because they like them and don't know any other way to express it. It's kind of sad, but then again, there's nothing to be done about it, and I just hope he gets over his feelings for me so he can find somebody who makes him happy, because I definitely cannot. And I'm not interested either. I have my husband, and I don't want anybody else. Stay tuned for more stories from Our Girl Relationships.